What is going on? Hope you're doing amazing. This is going to be such an important video. So I'm going to show you exactly how to build $1 million a month sales team using nothing but brute force. Okay, it doesn't matter about the brand. This is literally all of the systems, processes, things that I will use to brute force my way to $1 million a month. Okay, and obviously I've done this for multiple 7-figure offers, people like Iman, but even people who really don't have anywhere near the same size of brand, because there is such predictable mechanisms that I put in place to ensure that scaling is inevitable. So if you're an offer owner doing, 100K a month, for example, or you're a sales manager, or you're just a sales rep, whatever it might be, pay attention, right? Because this is going to be some unheard of shit that is going to allow you to skyrocket to the moon. Let's crack in. All right, so part one of this is gonna be some maths, and I will do a full video around numbers breakdown, how to reverse engineer targets as a company. I wanna just do a high level overview right now in the iPad, right? So it can be very methodical, and naturally the higher the price point, right, the better it is, because you need less calls, less deals, right, to actually make that happen. But I'll run you through some numbers right now that will essentially kind of break this down, right? So I'm basing this off of a current client that I have, where the high ticket is 6.8K and the low ticket is basically 2K. Okay, now if we do a blended deal value, right, of those two, of 5,360, and what that is 70% of the deals are on the high ticket, and then the remaining 30% are on the mid ticket, right, the 2K, right? We have a 70% show rate, right? And again, you obviously should know all of these numbers. What that means that needs to happen is we need 187 deals completed, right? Because you got 1 million divided by, right, 5,360. This is going to be some ugly writing, but hey, it doesn't matter about that. It matters about the source, right? So the number of shows needed, right, each is 188. So number of calls booked needed each is 269, right? 6.8K deals would be 33, and then 2K deals would be 14. Okay, that would be at a 25% close rate. Okay, now realistically, what my teams are pacing is more around that 35% one, right? So again, we want to kind of plan for worst case scenario. We also want to look at a bit more of a realistic one as well. So if we look at a 35% show rate comparatively, right, that would be 134 shows needed, and it would be 192 calls booked. This is each, right? Again, okay, naturally it's going to be the same number of closers, but obviously the amount of calls actually required to be on calendar is naturally very different. Okay, so if we then look at per closer, what the daily targets would be, essentially at 35% close rate, well, at all of them, it's 2.1 closes needed per day, right? At a 35% close rate, that would be just over 6, right? 6.1 shows a day, okay? So again, this stuff is so simple and so easy. It really kind of pains my soul if people don't put any amount of time into workshopping this, because at the end of the day, put it into fucking Claude and you can reverse or engineer all of it with a singular prompt. Like, it's very, very easy, right? So for a 6.1, we would need 8.7 calls booked per day based around that show rate, okay? So the generalized math is that each closer would need 47 closers in the month. Now, naturally, this is not like a super high ticket product, which means that we're going to need a lot more calls and a lot more closes, right? There are other offers I'm running where it's like a 50K package. Hitting $1 million a month is, when you run the maths on that, it's like, okay, this is somewhat easy comparatively. Now, there are different struggles that come with that. Naturally, as you can imagine, it's a totally different type of ICP. It's often going to be 2 call processes in place. It's going to be way more follow-up, right? Something like this offer is very, very B2C, so we obviously want to be massively optimizing for on-call closes. But essentially, reverse engineer your numbers, actually know what your numbers look like. And again, I'll do a full training around this, but you need really a clear understanding of what this looks like. And we'll go into this later into the video. But if we look at like no-shows, no-shows is something that's really typically badly tracked. And what I mean with that is, like, someone who has confirmed they're going to show up to the call and then doesn't show up, fair enough, that's a no-show. But we can also look at cancelled by us, i.e., before they even took the call, we realized they weren't qualified, which is a funnel issue, or cancelled by them, which is, for whatever reason, in the time from booking to them actually jumping on, there was something that came up and they pulled away and they canceled the call. That's a totally different type of thing that we would be tracking, but also that we would need to adjust for, okay? And then we would need workflows underneath it and all types of different things, which again, we'll go through. But at a high level, you need to understand this kind of rate of numbers, and then you need to start looking at individual sales rep performance, okay? So what I might see is that there's one closer who has 55% close rate, right? And an average sales manager would say, fantastic, that guy's killing it, he's fucking a beast. But if we look at his AOV and it was super low, what that shows is that he's really giving up the lower packages way too easy. Right? Whereas if I looked at someone else and they had a 25% close rate, but their AOV was massive, okay, maybe they don't have a great downsell process and they're almost pushing too hard to get the big packages and as a result losing some of the deals, but technically they are getting their leads to be more resourceful, right? So there's a different type of skill set that I have to calibrate around and train around, right? So these are things that you need to start getting clear on, because you should have individual rep understanding and training plans as a result of their numbers, and then you should have kind of the overseen numbers reverse engineered of what needs to happen in terms of calls coming through. Because we typically look at things like marketing, right? And say, okay, cool, like I need this number of calls booked from the market, but like there's so many other things that you can utilize outside of just marketing to really be able to drive massive volume, okay? And that is exactly some of the things that we're going to be going through on here. But if you don't have a clear basis of understanding on the numbers and where they're currently at and the skills that the closers do have and that they don't have and where the leaks are and where the drop off is, then we're going to be very, very blind coming into this, okay? So part one, and again, we'll do like a way more in-depth video on this, because this is one of those ones that's a bit of a beast. And you really want to be looking for what are the key levers that I can pull on. And that's my ethos when I take over a sales team, is basically like, let's look at the dashboard, let's look at the numbers, and what would be like the 3 things where if I put hyper focus into those, that would create the biggest quantum leaps in the revenue right now, right? Often it's going to be show rate, but it could be things like AOV, etc., right? So with that being said, let's go into part 2, but I wanted to give like at least a clear kind of point of that, because it's super important, right? If I'm going to scale a team to $1 million a month and I barely know the levers that I need to deploy to make that happen, it's not going to happen. All right, so part 2, this is going to change the game for you, okay? Because every single offer that I take over has a CRM of just a graveyard of leads, okay? And this is very common advice, like reactivate, but I'm gonna show you processes that go against the grain and really ensure that we can squeeze the juice, right? Because you've already paid for these leads, they're already quality, and then nothing's fucking typically being done with them. Maybe some people, when things are really quiet, are doing some outbound dials for a few days. Like, it's not productive. Okay, so one of the first things that I will do is a WhatsApp reactivation. This is so infinitely powerful because we can send videos, we can send voice messages, we can send like with the text, there can just be a simple button that they click on, which is like, I'm interested, and it takes them wherever we're trying to get them to. So there's 2 softwares, one's called UniChat and the other one's called SuperChat, right? Both of these you can link to your Meta Business Manager, right? So you can get a WhatsApp number, link it to your Meta Business Manager. You can even then get it verified. So it'd say like the offer owner name, for example, with a tick next to it. So it feels super official. And then with this, like I said, videos, voice messages, all of this stuff. And there's 2 angles that we can take with this. So the first angle would be just like a WhatsApp only reactivation blast. The beauty of this is that we don't need a bunch of funnels or them to get redirected to a webinar that leads loads of work or anything like that. It's literally just like, hey, we're doing something special because of Black Friday, and because you'd shown interest in potentially working with us before, you were invited to our promotional fucking, event that we're running or some shit like this, right? And we just basically have maybe a VSL that they would get funneled into, right? Simple little VSL, good to go. The alternative is it doesn't even need a VSL. I've done this before, where it's just the offer owner for 2 or 3 minutes explaining how, what the normal package looks like and how we're doing a heavy discount with a bunch of bonuses. And then basically you have your team replying to all of the leads that come through for that. So that one's very low effort up front, which is great, but it's obviously going to get less results than if we done more of the 3-day challenge or webinar approach. So that one would be more like, hey, because you previously expressed interest to work with us, we're inviting you to a private masterclass on XYZ date. It's 3 days long. We're going to go over the secrets of blah, 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 etc. That one is naturally less resistance up front because we're just simply inviting them to a free thing. So the CTA of that, right, the click-through rate is going to be way, way, way higher, okay? So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, and I'm not going to get too in-depth in the weeds, but I want you to think creatively. You can segment the lead list, right? You could have a slightly more personalized video based on the country they're in, right? Or based on the lead source that came from initially, whatever it might be. You can get quite creative with it, right? Which is always obviously a benefit that you want to do, because the more sort of personalized it does feel, the more that it's going to resonate and actually create like conversions and results, essentially. Okay, so that's really one of the main channels, but it's just one channel. I want to destroy that CRM. I want there to be no fucking stone unturned, right? So the other channels are naturally send blue, so powerful. So what I would do in this situation is like anyone that we can't do through WhatsApp, right? Because you can send like 30,000 messages in one hit through WhatsApp. Anyone that doesn't have a WhatsApp number, we could then send them an iMessage. Exactly the same, but we're just segmenting it and it should be a smaller amount of leads, right? Then we could also do SMS, then we could also do email, etc., right? So there's a lot of creative things that we can do with it, but I want to hit them from all fucking angles, right? Like the hammer them strategy. Super important, right? And essentially, when you really start to look at this in the right way, like there is such a golden pocket of opportunity within the CRM that takes no effort up front. We don't need to bring in any more leads. We don't need to test out new marketing campaigns, none of that shit. It's literally just like, let's take people that have already shown interest and let's get them across the line. Okay, so that is part 2, right, which is going to be super powerful, and it always just creates this massive chunk of revenue that we can immediately put into the business. Now, part 3, which links in quite nicely with this, is build an outbound army, right? So what this means is, like, let's say we bring on 6 outbound setters. We give them a power dialer, right? You got like Alaware, dialer.io, whatever it might be, and then we essentially frame the entire thing as a trial, where they have to prove themselves to earn a real spot on the team, where they then get access to more of the inbound leads and the more primed, hot, ready to go leads, okay? So now we've created this competitive environment. We're also getting super resourceful. So let's say that we link this with the WhatsApp reactivation. It's like, boom, now there's 6 brand new setters, all hungry, all looking to prove themselves, right? And whoever comes out on top gets a slot on the team with maybe like a base salary and hotter leads and all of this shit, right? And essentially that way, it's just such an easy way. And we can prime this on a big group interview, by the way. Hey, we're doing a crazy event. We want 6 outbound setters, and then it's going to be like the fucking Hunger Games. So if you survive that, you're going to get a full slot on the team and you're going to get XYZ, XYZ. Right, so now they're coming in with this proving energy, right? And if we can get $100, $200, $300 a day per setter from that, we are essentially making money from thin air, right? Because really none of those conversations would have happened if you were just sitting there with some setters that are waiting for inbound, right? So obviously you can do this without the whole WhatsApp blast stuff, but if you marry the two together, very, very powerful. Right, because all the people that are coming through the WhatsApp stuff, we've now got like very fast speed to lead, which is very important. So yeah, if you didn't watch the 5 untapped lessons running Iman's team, this is a big ethos part that I talked about it, where it's just like, get some people that are going to go to war, they're going to prove themselves, and then ultimately you just get to pick the best of the best, right? So it's like a trial period where we get to squeeze a bunch of money, and it's just an absolute game changer, right? So again, if you marry the two together, that's where you're going to get like unbelievable results, because obviously we know speed to lead is really going to be like one of the most important metrics for you to get massive conversions, right? I don't need to say that. Alex Hormozi has said that shit till the cows have come home, right? But I think it's like a 391x increase of conversion rate if it's done under 60 seconds, something like that, okay? So the outbound army is the other piece that I would typically put into pretty much any offer because it just works so well. And quick side note, naturally, like I said, these are all things that I will apply to any offer that I take over, but every offer is contextual, right? There's always different kind of things that I put in place, and it's very customized, right? So if you do want to explore what this could look like for your own offer, if you're a sales manager, you want guidance around that, whatever it might be, feel free to shoot me a message on Instagram. But other than that, let's get into part number 4. So I talked about this a little bit before, but essentially you got to be very careful with like lumping no-shows together. This was one of the biggest unlocks that I found through running different teams, right? Is like, there's a no-show rate. I remember distinctly running an offer with a bad no-show rate, and we kept focusing on it, and we were rebuilding workflows and having people dial them and do all kinds of shit. And it was like, fuck, this number won't go down. Why do we have like a 40-50% no-show rate? What we realized is that like actually a huge chunk of that was ones that was canceled by them. And there was also a huge chunk that was canceled by us, which technically shouldn't have been touching our no-show rate whatsoever. It was making things look far worse than they actually were, right? So you need to, let's dive into the iPad. You need to be tracking no-shows, naturally. You need to be tracking canceled by us, right? Which is basically like, okay, this person shouldn't have been on the calendar in the first place, right? And then the last one would be canceled by them, right? So there is so much opportunity within this and within this. And this is actually a little bit more like, okay, we're wasting time here, right? So you have 2 options for this situation. Either add more friction to the funnel or bring on a lead nurture specialist. Right, so bring on a lead nurture specialist, get them to actually like go through that, etc., and get like a far better process to this, because if it's your setters or your closers currently that are canceling those appointments, that's a really bad ROI of their time, because it could instead be used on actually generating revenue. Okay, so this is super important. Now, the easiest way realistically is to add more friction, right? So we've got to be looking at like, what were the reasons that we are canceling them? Typically it's money, right? And look at how can we make it a little bit more clear, or how can we add a bit more friction, or how can we add an extra step in the process, right? So if it's a very high ticket product, I would look more towards how can we add a triage process in the middle, right? So there's someone that's just handling that and making sure that there's like a true gatekeeping method before they can ever land on a closer's calendar. Because a closer's calendar, as we saw from reverse engineering the maths, very important, right? When you're hitting that 1 mil a month, every slot counts, right? And if it's been filled with someone that's total bullshit and is just going to waste that slot, game over. You're screwing yourself, okay? Now with these ones, very simple. What we need to be doing, right, is obviously on this, we can have people dialing, right, with both, right? So that's a great part of the outbound setters, again, is they're going to have a pipeline that's rotating of anyone that no-showed. But what we should also have is their own kind of tags or opportunity statuses in the CRM with SendBlue workflows and email workflows, right? And you want them to be different, right? A no-show one is obviously very different, right? Because they've confirmed they're going to show up and then didn't for whatever reason. Cancelled by them, that's a different type of beast, right? That might be fear that has created that. And obviously there's some crossover between the two, but typically you want to treat that in a different way. You want the wording of those messages and of those emails to match that. Hey, noticed that you had canceled the call. And one last point that I want to make on this is like most of the sales industry these days, and I can even think of like sales trainers and people, and I'm not ever going to be that channel that talks shit about individuals, but most people in sales are princesses. They just wait for the inbounds to land on their lap. Someone doesn't show, they barely try and get them back on the calendar. They don't dial them in the moment. Like it's such lazy bullshit behaviors that most sales reps exhibit, right? So that's why I look towards like automations and things that can pull them in, because I have grown to expect to a degree a little bit of laziness and princess energy. But on the flip side, I will also hold my team to a very high accountable standard where if you are a princess, go fucking be a princess on someone else's goddamn offer, right? So this is something where it's like, you got to marry the two up together, right? You got to have nice pipelines where they can go through the canceled by them and the no-shows and kind of reactivate them alongside the flows and the emails and all those things, right? Because we don't want to solely rely on human input. That's dangerous, right? There's too much variabilities within it, but we definitely don't want to only rely on automations either. Both of them are dangerous, but if we can bring two together, then ultimately we're going to increase the potentiality for what we can make in terms of revenue, okay? Now, part number 5. So I will write this on the iPad as well. Call abandonment. This again is another little gem that I learned from Iman's team, right? We were one of the early adopters of this software. Now it's become a fair amount more popular, but if you haven't heard of it, it's called iClosed, right? It's a calendar software, so it would swap out Calendly or whatever else you're using. But essentially, it's really just designed for sales teams. Like it's totally designed for sales teams. That's the core of it. And there's a lot of cool features in there. Now, one of the main ones that we're going to talk about right now is the call abandonment feature, right? So for them to even see the slots on the calendar, they have to fill out their first name, email, and phone number. Now with this, we now have the lead details. So let's say that they fill that in, they go to the calendar, they don't see any slots that work for them, and then they back out. We can now give them a call, right? And that is just game over territory, like total game over territory, right? Because it can just be very like logical. Hey, notice that you filled in your information, but didn't end up locking in a time on the calendar. Was it simply that you couldn't find a time that worked for you? Or was there something else on your mind that I can help you with right now? Game over. Now, again, I like to be very methodical with my approach. We'll do a separate video on this, but when I done this with Iman, I would record a voice note that was super high energy, really, really fucking good to go, and then basically have that, save it on my desktop as a .ogg file, which is what it saves as naturally when you download it on web.whatsapp. If you drag and drop that into the chat, it will send us a normal voice note on WhatsApp. So now I have this high energy voice note that's like, hey, it's Scott here from Iman's team. I saw that you locked in your name, your details, but you didn't actually lock in a slot. Wanted to see if there's something I can help with, blah, 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 all of the stuff that we just said. And now I'm sending it as a voice note. So now there's a personalized touch point of a voice note that feels very personal and is very contextual to their situation. But it took me about 5 seconds to do that. Right now, again, your number one go-to should always be dialing them. But let's say your setting team double dials them, doesn't get through, boom, go into WhatsApp, drag and drop the voice note across, game over. Now they're building a compounding pipeline on the back end. And it's just so easy, right? And again, this is how you put things in place to ensure that a sales team scales to $1 million a month. Because if you've got leaks of opportunity that's not being hit, what the fuck is the point? Like, you are not optimizing the amount of money that could be made. Okay. All right. So with that being said, I could go on for a long time. And like I said, with these videos, the goal is really to leave no stone unturned. And we are slowly chipping away at all of the things that I deploy into sales teams. But ultimately, like I said, every sales team is different, and I'm always innovating. I'm always improving. I'm always looking for things that are going to move the needle even more. But if you were to implement these 5 things onto a team that really doesn't have much in place, or even does have a lot in place, right? There's always massive leaks that are happening in sales teams. It's just natural. It's really the way of sales. And it's just that there is a lot of complexity involved in this, right? And all of this comes through experience of me doing this firsthand. Okay. So with that being said, let's stop leaving fucking leads at the door, right? And leaving all of this opportunity. Let's actually implement some of these things. If you're a sales rep, like I said, be the CEO of your own role. Start like being the person that gets resourceful and makes money, not just waits for money to land on their dick. And with that being said, I'm looking forward to catch you in the next video. Peace and love. Catch you fucking soon. Goodbye.